Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father or mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there is enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build, but did not have the resources to finish." Or what king, marching into battle, would not first sit down and decide whether, with 10,000 troops, he can successfully oppose another king, advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far off, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of the Lord. Great crowds are following Jesus. And you see in the gospel a distinction between the crowds and disciples. They are two different groups. The crowd is very interested, but they're not ready to make a commitment. They follow Jesus when it's convenient, when he's close to them. The disciples follow Jesus from town to town because they want more. They're in it for more. In this gospel passage, Jesus is asking all of us to measure our commitments according to whether or not we will be faithful to him. Anyone who comes to me without hating father, mother, wife, children, brother, sister cannot be my disciple. Wow. What does that mean? In the Hebrew language, the term hate has a broader meaning than our meaning for hate, the way we use it today. For the Hebrew, that term hate could mean not necessarily sinful dislike for somebody, but it might mean more or less to have a lesser preference for a thing. And so Jesus is asking his disciples to assess commitments, whether or not they enhance a relationship with him or not, whether they bring you closer to heaven or not. And what Jesus is asking, and when he says hate father, mother, this is not extremely out of the ordinary, because the gospel also says a man leaves father and mother to cling to his wife. Committed religious sisters and nuns and monks leave family and community life for a different and new community, for poverty, chastity, and obedience. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's embracing a life that is a deeper union with Christ through that vocational commitment. Celibate clergy pass up father and being father, mother, being husband, and the joys of marriage, we'll put it that way. They pass up all this to make a commitment to Christ. The question becomes, is my vocational calling or are my commitments enhancing my life with Jesus? If not, they need to be reconsidered if we want to be serious about being a disciple of Jesus Christ. At the very least, the question becomes, is this a pathway to heaven for me? For me, I discerned that becoming a priest was my path to heaven. For my parents, they discerned that their path for heaven was to get married and have children. And they carried many crosses with each of my brothers and sisters and myself. It's interesting how when I meet engaged couples, they're so happy when they come into the office and sit down and we start to talk. And they have put lots of energy in calculating the cost of their reception and how wonderful it's going to be. Nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, they often have really not processed the phrase, "till death do us part." What does that mean? Can you live with that cost? I heard something from a priest friend of mine recently. He was meeting with an engaged couple, and the prospective groom said, "Father, I'm not comfortable with, the term death do us part." And so he said, "What would you have me say?" And he said, "Well, I think we can say forever." So my priest friend said, "Okay, that's not a bad word. What do you mean by forever?" Forever means until I've had enough. This, in ecclesial parlance, is what we call an impediment to a marriage. You can imagine what the bride's face looked like. Okay? I don't know what happened with that engagement or marriage later on, but it tells you something. I meet with couples sometimes, and when we talk about the vows, I'll open the marriage ritual and I'll put it right in their hands and I'll say, "Can you sit close together for a minute here? And I want you to read those vows. See how beautiful they are." So they look at the vows, yes. And then I say to them, "Did you notice the asterisk at the end of the vows with the footnote at the bottom of the page?" So they start looking at the page and they get really confused, and then they start flipping pages, and I say to them, "What's wrong?" "Father, there's no asterisk and there's no footnote." That's right, there's no exception clause either. Because this is a commitment. And you need to calculate the cost. And yet, it's something we all must do. Jesus says, take up the cross. It's about living Christ in my daily life, one step at a time. One step at a time, moving forward to Christ. That's the cross. Doing it every day. And if I really calculate the cross, I have to admit that I can't afford it. But by the grace of God in Jesus Christ, I have everything that I need if I stick with him. And that's the invitation to discipleship. To follow Christ and have everything you need to get to heaven, not necessarily what you want. Weigh commitments against their price concerning my salvation. And so you look back at this seemingly harsh word, if anyone can't hate his father or mother or brother or sister. You can see a different tone when St. Paul says, love does no evil to the neighbor. Perhaps the greatest evil to the neighbor is when we would make a commitment, a serious commitment, and somehow not be able to calculate the cost because of the impact it might have on the one we're being committed to. However, if the commitment to Christ is put in front of everything, it definitely changes the odds for each of us. And so this calling is a calling for us to move from being part of the crowd to being a disciple of Christ and involving him in our commitments, involving him in our final end game, which is to stand before the gates of heaven and know and love and serve Jesus Christ. Let's stand in prayer.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro nobis Deus,